The African Union holds a virtual conference to discuss violence in the continent. The second of 5 Iranian tankers carrying fuel to Venezuela has entered the Bolivarian nation's territorial waters. Polls underway in Surinam for crucial general elections. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Ernesto Dominguez. The African Union Commission organized a virtual conference on Monday to give impetus to their stated goal of silencing the guns in Africa, which is the AU's theme for 2020. The regional body also seeks to strengthen collaborative efforts among member states, regional economic communities, civil society organizations, and the private sector to take ownership of the provisions contained in the Silencing the Gun initiative. The African Day session of the AU opened up on Monday with a speech by Musa Faki Mahamat, who recalled that despite significant progress, Africa continues to be affected by poverty and violence.
May this convention of union last 1,000.
South African President and African Union Chairperson Cyril Ramaphosa also addressed the world for the 57th anniversary of African Day on Monday. Ramaphosa remarked that the continent must now lead up on our efforts to drive the African agenda of security, peace and stability, of democracy and human rights, of women's emancipation and the protection of the environment.
We mark this Africa Day in the shadow of the coronavirus pandemic, which has swept across the world and left no part of our continent untouched. This COVID-19 pandemic will have a lasting impact on our ability to meet the aspiration of the African Union's Agenda 2063 of a peaceful, united, and prosperous continent. This virus has exposed the deep inequalities that continue to exist on our continent and across the world. It has shown how far we are from realizing our developmental goals and our responsibilities to the citizens of our continent.
The broadcast also featured one of the champions of Africa's liberation and the only remaining founding father of the OAU, Dr. Kenneth Kaunda of the Republic of Zambia. KK, as he is known, walked and worked side by side with other gallant giants of Africa's liberation in establishing the organization that strived to free the whole continent from the shackles of colonialism.
Our colonial borders have long separated us. Now a truly united Africa should rise, and initiatives like the African Continental Free Trade Area are a step in this direction.
And in regard to the African Day, today we would like to interview Mr. Mwandawiro Nganga, President of the Kenyan Communist Party and also President of the Kenya-Cuba Friendship Society. Mr. Nganga, it's a pleasure to have you today in Telesur. How are you?
Thank you very much, brothers.
Thank you. First of all,
let me first take this opportunity to pass my regards to the friends, people of Cuba, the government of Cuba, and the Communist Party of Cuba.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Because Cuba has always been part and parcel of the African Liberation Day in words and deeds.
For sure.
And even they shed their blood in solidarity with us. So we celebrate together.
It's a pleasure to have you here. First of all, we would like to know, according to your opinion, what are the main achievements and transformations that have taken place in Africa in the last years?
First of all is the removal of colonialism itself. Colonialism was a very, very brutal system. It enslaved our people. It created disharmony within our African people by creating artificial borders, dividing our people and making our people, plundering our economy, destroying our culture, and even committing genocide against the African people. So to struggle to remove colonialism, which happened starting from the late 1950s and especially in the 1960s, was a very, very progressive way forward and progressive achievement. And we were even very happy that in the last ones, like the one which took in Southern Africa, also in Angola, in Mozambique, and even in Namibia and South Africa. We are always grateful to our Cuban relatives and the brothers and sisters who never left us behind and who suffered with us and who struggled with us until we had the liberation. And now we are remaining only as a colony in Western Sahara, which has to be liberated from Morocco.
Yes, the audience of Latin America and the Caribbean listening to this program right now would like also to know what Africa has to offer to the world, Mr. Nganga.
Africa has a lot to offer for the world. First of all, lot of natural resources. Like all these natural resources, some which are even benefiting other people outside Africa, including even the imperialist countries and so forth. They have always go and continue to plant and benefit from the African mineral resources and so forth today. But what we can say is to the other people who are struggling for liberation like us in Latin America and all over the world, we can say Africa, the people now are conscious of their rights and they are really struggling. They say we won this battle from classical colonialism. Neocolonialism still stands there. There is capitalist regimes still exist in Africa today, and they are collaborating with the imperialists and the leaders to plunder the resources of the African people. But the African people have said it is not enough to have multi-party democracy. It is not enough to have so-called human rights. We have to share and benefit from the resources in the African continent. So you can say we share a lot of hope for the struggle for really genuine liberation of the people of African people based on equality and social justice. I think that hope and that struggle to transform the country, to remove colonialism and capitalism and create just societies which will distribute the wealth and enhance the lives of the people who the majority who are still suffering. That is a still hope that people are still struggling for change.
Okay, Mr. Nganga, let's put things a little bit in context. Africa and the world is facing right now a very problematic time with the pandemic of the COVID-19, and Africa is also affected. In your personal opinion, what do you think could be the economic and social impact of the pandemic for the continent, and how do you evaluate your role of the African governments to tackle the disease?
I think this COVID-19 pandemic is a really global pandemic which has impacted very negatively on the African people. The only good thing is that people through what is being done by World Health Organization, the governments are responding and trying to fight for it, but it is also teaching the African people and all over Africa, including in my country, Kenya, that really, unless we have societies based on social justice and equality, which are geared towards distributing wealth and enhancing poverty and development among the whole people together, we cannot really fight a lot the pandemic problem. Like now, it has done, the economies are very bad, but their lives are also being saved, and we are glad now. Actually, we are learning from the people of Cuba through their social system based on the socialism, that really you can create a health system which can really organize the whole populations and fight for that. That's why we are grateful that Cuba is helping throughout the world, including in Europe, Spain, in Italy, and it has helped us even in a lot of pandemic in the African continent. And we are even doctors all over, even in Kenya, we are having all of them. So really, this pandemic is really giving us, and the impact that the economies and the health people, unless they are geared towards social justice, this problem is big. Like in Kenya, the people have suffered the most. And like in other places, other people living in slums, they're poor. It has because they are prone to poverty. They have to live very close together, and lack of a lot of essential services like water, even like food, like proper housing squeezed together. So it is the poor who are suffering a lot. So, but the economies are right now, I can say, they are in really, really big problem in our countries.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Ganga. Certainly, the fast spread of the pandemic has demonstrated how globalized the world has become in the last years. In that context, how do you think the relations between Africa and Latin America should be?
I think that one, the relationship between Africa and Latin America should be even more closer forged together like that. Like right now, as we can hear, the people of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela who are resisting, trying to have the freedom for their country in Venezuela, and they wanted to be strangled by imperialism. Imperialism wants to strangle the Venezuelan nation together, even to deny them even their friendship with Iran. People want to solidarity with them with their oil, and even trying to make a lot of blockade. And also, very much like the blockade which has been unleashed since the 1959 upon Cuba. Very, very brutal financial, economic, and the other blockades. So much strangled the Cuban Revolution. I think it is right now the African countries more than enough ever before. They should solidify the relationship with Venezuela, and Latin America and Cuba and the whole of Latin America, and resist imperialism together. Even like the non-aligned movement, it is time it is more strengthened than ever before, so that it can really even protect the interests of the South, including Latin America and Africa. The relationship should come before very, very slow. And we are very happy that Cuba has been in the forefront of forging that relationship before. And I think also Africa responded very well, because all the time, Africa everywhere in the United Nations, only few countries vote, but maybe only two who vote against Cuba. We can see Morocco sometimes, it's like that. But all the time, all the African countries really stand closer to Cuba. And I think those are relationships which now, ever than before, should be forged before.
Yes. One more question, please, Mr. Nganga. We all have witnessed in the last years the tremendous effort Africa is doing to achieve its development, and how African people is committed to work for that purpose. How do you see the future of the continent?
I think I can see, although now we are having very big difficulties, that is, at least we have a continent which is very, very rich in natural resources and even in human resources, I can say. But most of the majority of our people remain a lot of poor. And that is why, because we have chosen this system, our forefathers, those who struggled for African liberation, the four founders of African nations, whether you are talking about Kwame Nkrumah, when you are talking about Abdi Nasser, whether you are talking about Madibo Keita of Mali, whether you are talking about Amilcar Cabral, who was murdered by imperialists, Samora Machel of Mozambique, who was murdered, Patrice Lumumba, who was earlier murdered, and even our own Mau Mau, Dedan Kimathi in Kenya. So all those ones had a very good vision of really bringing the liberation of the African people, so that the people can share their wealth, and so that they can return the humanity of the African people who are together sharing their wealth and removing those else. But unfortunately, colonialism gave into neocolonialism, and the leaders who have taken power and are still in power today are geared towards the capitalist system. So this impedes the development of the African nations. But what I can say, the hope is that all over the continent in Africa, people are conscious of their duty to liberate their countries against neocolonialism, against the capitalist regimes which are there, so that we can really share and distribute wealth for the development of each people in our African continent. That vision and that there is struggle going on, conscious people saying it is not enough to have multi-party democracy. We have now to really have a system which shares the wealth and having participatory democracy in the interest of all people in society, not only a few elites. That struggle is really continuing, even though the people are suffering a lot, but they are suffering while they are struggling. So that's why we are very happy. That's why, like in Kenya and all over, we have the communist parties. Like now we have the African Left Network Forum, which is our headquarters is based in Senegal, where about 33 communist parties in Africa, we gather together to discuss and have solidarity and plans of how to continue the struggle for really changing our country. So it is really the hope which I can see is the future. Africa has a very good future because people are hopeful and they are not only sitting and hoping, but they are struggling to change.
Mr. Nganga, thank you very much to share your time with Telesur. Thank you.
And thank you very much for honoring me with speaking to the Telesur. It's a big honor to me.
Thank you very much. More stories coming up after this short break, so don't go away. Welcome back. The second of 5 Iranian tankers carrying fuel to the Bolivarian Republic has officially entered Venezuelan waters. The tanker, called Forest, was met by Venezuelan naval patrol boat north of Margarita and is headed towards the port of El Palito, where one of the country's refineries is located. The third ship, Petunia, is expected to arrive on May 27. The entire fleet is carrying about 1.5 million barrels of gasoline. The U.S., which has imposed sanctions on both Venezuela and Iran, says it is monitoring the convoy, while Caracas and Tehran have warned Washington not to interfere with the delivery. Meanwhile, the first oil tanker, Fortune, has docked in the port of Puerto Cabello in northern Carabobo State. The tanker has already started to unload fuel and other oil products to the El Palito refinery. Minister of Petroleum Tarek Al-Aissami have thanked the Iranian government for its historic act of solidarity during the global crisis and said the delivery is an example of peace diplomacy and nations expressing their right to economic freedom. In Suriname, people are heading to the polls to determine whether President Desi Bouterse, who has been found guilty of murder and sentenced to 20 years in prison, will continue to lead the country. The authorities lifted a partial coronavirus lockdown this Monday to facilitate voting. Voters lined up a meter apart and polls opened at 7 a.m. Just over 380,000 people are eligible to elect the 51 members of the National Assembly, which will then elect the president. Bouterse is seeking a third term in office. Barbados Prime Minister Mia Mottley has advised public servants that salaries will be paid in full should the government introduce forced saving to rebound from the effects of the COVID-19.
And believe you me, every public servant and every person who is paid by government will receive their full salary package. The majority of it by far will be in cash. But we are asking some to look at bonds that will carry interest rates of 5%. Why? Because at the end of the day, the government is going to have to be the one driving the Capital Works program in Barbados, dealing with water, dealing with roads, dealing with cleaning the country, dealing with building gabions, dealing with building schools that are the subject of environmental problems every week, or other facilities that government has that literally are in bad need of repair.
Trinidad and Tobago is now the 8th Caribbean country to be declared virus-free with 0 active cases of COVID-19. On Friday, the Ministry of Health disclosed that the last active patient was being discharged from the hospital. This brings the total number of recoveries to 108 and 8 deaths. The other Caribbean nations to have 0 active cases include St. Lucia, Dominica, St. Kitts and Nevis, Belize, Anguilla, Montserrat, and St. Barthélemy. The Brazilian health minister, as of Sunday, has registered over 23,000 deaths caused by COVID-19. Authorities also highlighted that more than 140,000 people have been discharged from hospitals after overcoming the virus. Meanwhile, far-right President Jair Bolsonaro continues to rally against the necessary measures to stop the spread of the virus. In recent statements, he expressed his support for the use of specific types of antibiotics for patients and those mild symptoms. However, according to scientific studies, the use of these medicines increases the risk of death. And Bolivia's health ministry confirmed on Sunday 348 new coronavirus cases. The report noted that the overall tally of cases increased to over 6,000, while the number of deaths stood at 250,000. Meanwhile, the number of patients discharged from hospitals stood at over 600 on late Sunday, while no new cases have been reported in the most affected departments. Authorities agree this is due to the lack of tests to diagnose the disease. To the U.S., where the Trump administration's initiatives to test nursing home residents and staff members for the novel coronavirus appears to have failed, as half of all states in full not fulfilled the goals. The initiative was launched by the White House on May 11. State governors were requested to target nursing homes and retirement facilities within 14 days to stop the spread of the COVID-19. But several authorities have argued against the plan, stating that the logistic, budget, and human resources needed were too high to fulfill the task in the required 2-week period, while others even claim whether the proposal was a good use of time and money. The United States has the highest number of COVID-19 cases in the world, with over 100,000 deaths registered. And during the time Europe was experiencing its dark ages, a period of intellectual, cultural, and economic regression that lasted from the 6th to the 13th century, the people of Africa were experiencing an almost continent-wide renaissance after the decline of the Nile Valley civilizations of Egypt. Let's take a look at some of the most representative people of those times.
Unlike Europe, the African Middle Age was a period of cultural splendor south of the Mediterranean. However, centuries later, European colonization through the plundering of mineral and human wealth turned cities into villages and African culture into the folklore of the novel savage stereotype. A land plagued with beasts and diseases, both cultural and apocryphal. The great African civilizations, however, left humanity inexhaustible sources of wisdom and civility, yet to be discovered. Though often overshadowed by the Egyptian neighbors to the north, the Kingdom of Kush stood as a regional power in Africa for over 1,000 years. This ancient Nubian empire reached its peak in the 2nd millennium BC, when it ruled over Upper Nile territories in what is now Sudan. Kush was an important economic center, and its cultural connection with Egypt made them to worship the Egyptian gods, mummify their dead, and build their own types of pyramids. Not far south, in the Horn of Africa, the Aksum Empire was an important military power and trading nation in the area that is now Eritrea and northern Ethiopia, existing in the 9th to 10th century. At its height, it was one of the 4 major international superpowers of its day, along with Persia, Rome, and China. Like Egypt's pyramids, Aksum stelae were like great billboards announcing the world the authority, power, and greatness of the ruling families. Not far from there, the Ethiopian Empire, also known as the Abyssinia, was one of the several East African kingdoms uncovered what is now the northern half Ethiopia. Established in the 12th century and lasting until 1974, it is one of the longest-running empires of all time. The Ethiopian Empire successfully resisted Italian colonization in the 19th century, defeating Italy in the First Italo-Ethiopian War under the rule of Menelik II. Ethiopia was one of the only two African countries to retain its independence throughout this period.
And as we are celebrating the Day of Africa, we invite you to listen to the Anthem of the African Union, led by State Theater Youth Choir at the AU headquarters in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. With this song, we come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website, telasurenglish.net, and join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Ernesto Dominguez. Thank you for watching.